Well, first of all, I'm so happy to have you, and I know it's late to where you are, so thanks especially for coming on.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me. I was so excited when we were talking about different topics to share, and we decided about confidence on camera.
Yes. So let's dive in. Well, first of all, of course, tell us a little bit more about who you are. And first of all, I already teed up the audience a little bit with those people that were here earlier, but about how you are a brilliant publicist, celebrity maker, and I've been so honored to work with you over almost the past year.
I know. Well, thank you. Thank you for the lovely introduction. And honestly, Karen, there's so many things that we do in the world, but our main vision and purpose is that we serve high-achieving women. We serve women leaders, advocates, women entrepreneurs, and those in the corporate space. And we serve people who have a purpose, and we help them to take the world stage. So we help them to make a bigger impact, not only on the world, but also on their bottom line.
I love it. And you do a brilliant job at it.
Thank you. And so the tools that we use as the vehicle to help women achieve those dreams. Are we there?
Yeah, I heard it. Yeah. The tool that we use to help women achieve those dreams, that's what I heard. Uh-oh. Am I cutting out? If anybody else is listening, Lynn, I see you might be here. Can you tell us if you can hear? Can you hear me?
I don't know if you can hear me now,
yeah.
But your screen is moving now, so good.
Okay.
Well, I just started to say, Karen, that one of the things that's really unique about what we do, it incorporates personal branding work and business foundation, but we also use publicity and marketing tools to help to elevate women's voices. You know, and that can look like publicity opportunities, speaking on the stage, whether that's TEDx or for a corporation or an organization, and then being quoted in credible places, appearing on podcasts. And so our topic of conversation tonight is something that's really important to me, because as an online entrepreneur, we no longer have the luxury of kind of hiding behind the story of our brand anymore. We have to step out there and tell our own. And so often there is so much that can hold us back from doing that. And a lot of that is how we feel about being on camera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's jump in. I totally agree. What do you think is the number one thing, or what's the biggest tip that you want to offer?
Well, I think the most important thing, which you've probably heard me say a bazillion times by now, is that practice makes permanent. So how you prepare is really how you're going to play. It's how you're going to show up. And taking the time to practice and prepare in a way where you're using good skills and techniques instead of just practicing speaking on camera, but really preparing thoughtfully and utilizing strategies and tactics that are going to help you to create the results that you want. That's the best way to feel more comfortable on camera, is to really be truly prepared.
Mm-hmm. What do you think is the best way to do that? Prepare.
So, well, a couple different ways. One, we all have these brilliant smartphones now, so we can video ourselves, which is a great tool. I highly recommend it. I recommend practicing, videoing, and then I also suggest, if you have a Facebook group, if you do Instagram Lives, go live and do it. You know, after you have practiced and prepared, and you feel confident enough that you're prepared, that's the best way to go out there and actually do it. So start doing those Facebook Lives, start doing Instagram Lives or LinkedIn, whatever it might be, doing the podcast interviews. But here's the thing, if you're doing podcast interviews, which a lot of those are on camera now, most of them, go back and critique. That's advice that not everybody wants to hear, but I can tell you it will be the biggest game changer for you. Because if you can go back and objectively watch your podcast interviews and critique yourself, and don't be super hard, of course, we want to give ourselves some grace, but being really thoughtful about, if I were listening to this podcast interview, would I understand the story, not knowing the backstory? If I were listening to this interview, would this be a captivating conversation? And just being really objective, critique yourself. There's no way to get where you want to go if you don't take the time to figure out, one, where you're starting, and two, how can we improve?
Oh my gosh, you're speaking my language. So what do you think, thinking about somebody who is watching themselves, maybe doesn't know exactly what to look for, what would you say is the first thing that they need to look for?
Well, one of the things that is a little bit different. So actually, I want to touch on one of the things that you talk about a lot, because I work with clients a lot on this. And I want your facial expression to match what you're saying. It's very important because, when we have a screen in front of us, it's amazing and brilliant. I mean, I'm here on my first farm in Kentucky. You are on the West Coast, and we are doing an Instagram Live together because we have the luxury of these screens. However, it's also an added barrier to communication. So we want to be 100% certain that we are communicating in a way that is really intentional, and we want to give people every opportunity to understand who we are and what we stand for. So the last thing that I want to see is someone come on and say, I'm so excited to be here, because they have nerves. So I want to see it in your face. And so when we are talking about something that's exciting, a lot of times we have clients who are talking about serious and somber subjects. That doesn't mean that we have to be grinning and smiling the entire time. Just making sure that you're not letting the presence of the camera get in the way of your natural facial expression, because your natural facial expression is going to follow what it is that you're communicating.
Oh, yes. It's so true, isn't it? And the whole RBF, resting bee face, is very, prominent, I should say.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And so that's, I think, a really good opportunity, especially if you're speaking on camera and there are multiple people involved in the conversation. If you're in a television set and you're being interviewed by more than one person, or you're in a panel type setting, always being thoughtful and remembering when you are on camera, there is an element of performance. So you may have that natural inclination for that resting bee face, like you mentioned, but just a pleasant, you don't have to be smiling, grin, toothy grin while other people are speaking, but acknowledging with your body language, making sure that you are adjusting the angle of your hip and shoulders so that you're showing interest in who is speaking. And just a pleasant face. Nothing, it doesn't have to be crazy and cheesy, but just something pleasant. And, making sure that you are showing interest as well. And that really comes across on camera, and that's something that matters. So people who are listening, they're definitely going to pick up on that. If there are multiple people involved in the conversation and you're just sitting there looking bored to death and not acknowledging that someone else is talking. So we want to take all of those things into consideration when we're on camera. So I think that's a big one that's really simple when you watch things back, to identify, okay, I'm doing a really good job here, or okay, I'm letting the screen make me a little bit nervous, and so I can see that that's inhibiting my natural facial expression. So I need to be a little bit more aware of that. And then go in and spend some time videoing yourself. Use your iPhone and just set it up. Run some practices, run some practice interviews all on your own. Spend 3 to 5 minutes answering some questions, and then go back and watch it and make sure that you are practicing in a way that's moving you towards where you want to go.
Yeah, I think about eyebrows as well, and just how sometimes we don't even realize. I feel like it wasn't until I got into this as my own profession that I didn't know all the facial muscles that I had in my face.
Yeah, eyebrows up. I mean, I've got so much Botox in my forehead, mine aren't going down, but We want to look engaged and like we're paying attention. So eyebrows up and a smile on your face. It's, you know, that's why for years and years and years, people who run really successful sales teams, they tell you to put a mirror next to your telephone or next to your Zoom so you can make sure that you're smiling, because when you're smiling, it's much easier for people to connect with you. So give everyone every single opportunity that you can, especially when you're showing up on camera, and smile. Just be pleasant. So that facial expression is a big one for me.
It's such a good reminder. I love how you made the connection literally between the connection of the facial expression and what is the impact.
Right.
And thinking about, you know, when we're connected to people, we are also more likable. And there's so many great positive benefits to this.
100%. 100%. So I've got a couple more. So one of the things that is super important on camera, which is a little bit different than when even you're speaking on a stage, is body language. One of the things that I know that you recommend a lot is just pick up space, and that is beautiful and brilliant. And on a stage, it translates in confidence, and it is perfect advice. When we're on camera, we're in a little different setting. So if I'm using big hand gestures and I'm taking up a lot of space and I'm moving my body from side to side in the screen, it's going to be extremely distracting from my message. So one of the things that I always suggest for women is what I call the V box. So if you made like a rectangle right around your bust area, that's where you want your hands to rest, as far as not on your body, but that's kind of your resting space for your hands. And you don't want to really get outside of that, because we don't want those big distracting motions when we're on camera. We want to keep our hand motions very, again, natural, but we want to keep them in a place where it's not distracting from what it is that we're sharing. And so keeping in mind that our hand motions are definitely, we don't want them to go outside of the screen. You don't want to extend your arms at full length, because you lose that. It becomes distracting and can actually detract from your message instead of support it.
That's such a good reminder in general about our hand gestures need to illuminate the content, not take over and getting in the way. Yeah, thank you. That's a great one. What else? Okay, so one of my others, which also has to do with body language, is, and I know you've heard me talk about this before, and I call it fig leafing. So this is, you know, if you think back to the times of Adam and Eve, when they, you know, you see the little cartoon drawings, or you hear about them covering up with a leaf, and they're covering, you know, their privates with the leaf. The last thing that we want to do with our own body language, especially if we're having an in-person television interview, is to cover our privates with our hands. It is literally the body language conveyance of fear, of a lack of confidence. It's everything we do not want to convey. And so I see so many people do this when they walk onto the stage, or when they're waiting, or even when they're setting, they'll cover themselves. So again, making sure that we have open posture, and we'll talk about that here in a second, but finding a nice, comfortable resting spot for your hands. I don't mind if you rest in a triangle. I don't mind, you know, you may have a podium that you're sitting at, or a table when you're being interviewed, and you may not, but making sure that you're really thoughtful about where you're placing your hands, because you can convey a lack of confidence completely without even knowing it. And that's something that I see all the time. It's my biggest pet peeve when I see people posing for photos that way. With the fig leaf? Yes, fig leafing, covering themselves up, yes. I don't know that I ever told you, Brielle. I was doing a training, and there was a gentleman that did the fig leaf, and then he saw his video, and he called himself, well, what he did every time he made a point with the team, he would put his hand up like that, so he would basically flash the audience. And he saw the video, and he said, I'm the fig leaf flasher. So he coined himself that term. But yeah, these weird, we all have these habits, right? That we do, these funny things that we do, we often don't even realize. And that's what is so powerful about the video. Absolutely. So then videoing yourself gives you the opportunity to start to identify those. And they may not be distracting in day-to-day conversation,
But when you have a short segment, and most videoed segments are short, most television segments average 1.5 to 2 minutes. Sometimes if you're lucky, you may get 5. And then of course, if you're doing a podcast interview, you may get longer, but those also are getting shorter and shorter. Making sure that you're not doing something in a repetitive manner that's going to be distracting or take away, whether it's a word or a statement or a sound or a hand motion. We want to really focus on what it is that you're saying. So of course we want to have that prepared ahead of time and know the message of what you want to bring to the conversation, but also being sure that we interpret a person, their confidence, their presence, their personal brand, how they leave us feeling. We interpret more than 80% of that based on our physical presence, not necessarily even the words that we're saying. So we get so caught up spending so much time on crafting our messages and our sound bites and all of these things, which are so vital. But if you don't have the other piece fully prepared, then your execution is going to fail.
That is so important. Yes. I want to say amen. Absolutely. It is amazing, isn't it? How we get so fixated on the message, and yet it's the body language and our voice and all of that people are attuning to. All right. You had another one, I think.
I do. So it's very simple. I have a 2-year-old at home, and so it's one of his favorite songs, the Head and Shoulders, Knees and Toes. So when you're on camera, whether you are on a television set or you are on podcast, no matter what it might be, when you're showing up on camera, just run a quick checklist when you sit down. So if you are sitting with one host, be sure that your head, of course, is upright. We want our shoulders open and confident, but we want to turn those shoulders right towards our host. We want to be leaning in enough to show that we're interested and show that we're engaged. If I showed up and I was all slouched back and leaned over, I wouldn't be showing up as a professional in my body language. So we want to make sure that your body language matches your brilliance on the inside. So just run through that quick checklist. Is my head upright and confident? Are my shoulders back and turned so that I'm engaging with my host or my audience? Because if you are in a position where you have a live studio audience and they may take questions or any of those sorts of things, you want to turn to acknowledge whomever is speaking to you and asking those questions. And then knees. This is a big one, especially for my ladies. If you are wearing a dress or a skirt, make sure that your knees are together. Make sure if you are wearing a dress or a skirt that your dress comes below your knees when you set. Because we want to be certain that we are giving everybody a show with all of our brilliance, not with our knees or our skirt. So making sure that your knees are together, and then our toes. Always making sure that your toes, a good rule of thumb is that your toes should point in the direction of the person who's speaking to you.
Oh, that's
so whether you have
a great tip.
Yeah, whether you have your ankles crossed or you're sitting with your feet on the floor, it would be a very awkward body position for your toes to be pointed one way and your shoulders to be pointed towards your host. So just always making sure that your toes are pointed in the direction of the person who is speaking to you or that you're addressing.
Okay, excellent. What other tips do you have for us?
Those are my top tips. So if you can execute on all of those, then you're going to show up and be way more prepared and far more professional than most people who are doing on-camera appearances.
First of all, thank you for your generosity and sharing all of those tips after all of the years of experience that you have. And I would love to know, Brielle, personally, what is the thing that you most had to work on when you were coming up in these things?
So I love being on camera. First of all, it's for me, it's one of those things. I talk about this a lot. I'll say, sometimes our clients get like a media high whenever we get the chance to be on television or we get the chance to have a really great podcast interview or do an awesome Instagram live or even be on the stage. It's that energy, that feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm really this is amazing. Like I'm reaching people and connecting. And so that's always been there for me. But just like everybody else, everyone has room for improvement. And I say all the time too, like when you watch people on the Tonight Show, none of that is happenstance. Their body language, the conversation, what they're wearing, how they show up. They have a strategic team who puts those pieces together. So we all have the ability to continue to improve. And for me, the biggest thing, Karen, is I get stuck on a word. And I will use that word over and over and over again. And so I have to be really careful. And for me, it's just once I become aware of it, then I just start to recognize it and remove it from my vocabulary. Actually is something that I say a lot. When I'm in agreement with someone, I will say 100%, like over and over and over again. So, just those sorts of things, being aware of those statements and things that I'm saying, and making sure that I start to eliminate those things from my vocabulary. Just recognizing when I say them and starting to pull them out.
That's really good. First of all, thank you for your vulnerability and sharing that with us. And that's such a good reminder about the words that we say. I mean, I feel, you get rid of one and then another one pops up and then another one, get rid of that. It's definitely a thing that we have to navigate and practice all the time.
Right, and it's ongoing. I mean, the thing is, you can eliminate and pauses and all of those things from your language, and you can still have other things that are going to show up for you. Eliminating all of those filler words that doesn't make you become a fabulous on-camera speaker. We want to stay authentic. We want to bring an authentic expression of ourselves. So using words that are in our typical vocabulary that's really powerful. It's a really great way to create connection. So we don't want to eliminate everything. We just want to be really thoughtful and recognize when we are being repetitious and that sort of thing. And, another thing for me is qualifiers. And that's something that I see women do a lot. And I know you've heard me talk about this. I think, I feel, I believe. Those are all qualifiers that take you from an expert to a person giving an opinion. And you are having the opportunity of being on camera, on that television set, on that podcast, on that stage, because you are an expert. So own your expertise and start to eliminate those words. And that's something, those are words that I'd love to see people in general, but specifically women, eliminate from their language kind of all together. Let's just start eliminating those and making powerful statements and claiming our expertise.
That's another good reminder. And those things are hard to eliminate, aren't they? I feel like I'm constantly working on those as well. Well, Brielle, what haven't I asked you yet that you would like to share, or is there something more that you'd like to share?
I just want to share that, not feeling super confident on camera is totally normal. The idea of being excited and nervous at the same time, that's totally normal. And so don't ever be super hard on yourself. Don't beat yourself up. If you are excited about being an advocate or an entrepreneur or a leader, but you kind of have that maybe a little bit of feeling holding you back from, I don't know if I want to be on camera, I don't know how I'm going to show up. That's not uncommon at all. It's super natural. It's very normal. And just taking the time to put into practice some of these tips and really feel prepared is the best way to battle that feeling of fear that comes sometime with the idea of going on camera and that vulnerability. And also, I think a big thing too is you don't have to share everything to make a massive impact. You don't have to share all of the details. And so being aware and understanding that your story has meaning, it has power, and it has impact, and it belongs just as much to you as it does to the people that need to hear it. I say that all the time. It's in my TEDx talk, but it's true. And knowing that you don't have to share every single detail in order to really make a powerful and long-lasting impact.
It's a very good reminder. Be brief, be bright, be done, as I love to say.